I'm Alan Baird. I'm Chief Social Work Advisor to the Scottish Government, and it's my pleasure to chair the session today. As somebody who's recently moved from local to Scottish Government, you can see why I've moved, to be able to work regularly in such magnificent surroundings, except for the part where your desk is in Victoria Quay, and trying to find it 2 months on is still testing me to the limit. So I hope you're all geared up this morning for a day of listening, playing games, learning and planning. One of the great opportunities, or the other great opportunity, apart from working in places like this, is the opportunity to work more closely with officials and ministers in the Scottish Government. And particularly over the last 2 months, I've had confirmed to me the passion and determination which the Minister for Children and Young People has to improve outcomes across the country. And it therefore gives me great pleasure to welcome Minister Aileen Campbell to address us this morning. Minister.
Alan, and good morning to everyone, and it is lovely to be in this splendid surroundings, and it's nice to see you all here for the second of our two-part summit focusing on improving outcomes for children who are looked after. The first one had been 6 months ago, but who would have thought, with today being an exception, that 6 months on we'd still be in winter. But nevertheless, it looks like the weather's changing for the better. Now today I wanted to talk a wee bit about the issues that were raised at our first meeting, and then update you about the work we're planning or already taking forward to tackle that. Now, we all recognise that there are many reasons why children and young people become looked after. Some have experienced neglect, some have experienced mental, physical or emotional abuse, and some parents are unable to look after their children because of their own substance or alcohol misuse or poor parenting skills. But whatever the reason, a child should only become subject to a home supervision order if it's in the best interest of them and allows for their outcomes to be improved whilst remaining in the family home. Now, the latest children looked after statistics show that just under 1/3 of all looked after children are looked after at home with their parents. And that was over 5,000 children in 2011-12, and is a significant proportion of the whole looked after population. And yet the outcomes for this group are poorer than their peers, and there remains few structured opportunities for issues to be raised by practitioners and sector leaders about that group. There's no equivalent of the British Adoption and Fostering Association or the Fostering Network equivalent for this group of children. So I think it's absolutely right that we focus our attention on them, as any good corporate parent should. And that's why we're all here today, to ensure that this isn't just another summit, but it can also be a catalyst for improvement and continued partnership. So turning to some of the findings from our last meeting and some of the actions that we've taken forward, one of the first themes was around integrating policies and processes. Now, we heard from you that policies and process for them to work, for the policy process to work for children and young people who are at risk of becoming subject to home supervision, they must be fully integrated. And the GIRFEC approach applies to all children facing various degrees of need and risk, from the most minor to the most intense. So by adopting the GIRFEC approach to the identification of concerns and using the national practice model to assess and analyse what is going on in each child's life, professionals will be better able to develop and to review whether progress has been made. So in response, what we're doing is, through the Children and Young People Bill, we'll be placing key elements of GIRFEC on statute and setting out the role of the named person and how that will operate with regards to information sharing. The bill also aims to improve the way services work to support children, young people and families by creating a single point of contact around every child or young person, ensuring coordinated planning and delivery of services with a focus on outcomes, and providing a holistic and shared understanding of a child or young person's well-being. Now, we'll be hearing shortly from Mike Bobby from the Getting It Right for Every Child team in the Scottish Government, who is going to talk about the national practice framework and the wellbeing wheel, and also GIRFEC Cluedo, which I think will be fun later on. Turning to the second issue that the second theme that came through was about the children's hearing system, around some of the issues around ensuring that panel members have the best understanding that they possibly can around the purpose of home supervision, and making sure that decision and the subsequent actions are consistent and effective across the country. So what we're doing is, you'll be aware of the Children's Hearing Bill coming into force next month, and as part of the preparations for its implementation, we're actively looking at how panel members' training can include inputs from the work we are doing to improve the effectiveness of home supervision. The third theme that came through from the first summit was about improving the effectiveness of assessment and care planning processes for children and young people on home supervision. Now, where home supervision is identified as the best choice for a child, any planned multi-agency action should be integrated with a collective focus on improving well-being and the particular needs of the child. Assessments and care planning need to be high quality, robust and evidence-based, with a clear aim of improving the well-being of the child. The recent research from SCRA highlighted that the inclusion of education in care plans varies in quality. We also heard at the December event that the care plans for children on home supervision can lack a clear definition around expectations on the child and their family, and on the consequences of not meeting those, and that this can lead to unacceptable drift in the process and can impact severely on the effectiveness of that home supervision for improving the child's well-being. So again, from the Scottish Government's point of view, the bill wants to ensure that there is a single approach to assessment and planning for children who need additional support from services by embedding the GIRFEC approach. And it will require that a single child's plan is produced for every child who needs one, to coordinate the range of services required to meet the needs of that child. We're also building up evidence of what measures have the most effect in relation to the child's needs and risks defined by wellbeing. And we've been looking at new evidence from the Children Looked After statistics collected by the Scottish Government to find out more about the care histories of children who have been on home supervision. So the data collection is getting better, with robust stats on the profile and placement histories of the children, showing that of those who were only ever looked after at home, 62% were looked after at home for over 12 months. 20% of children who start to be looked after at home end up being looked after away from home. And nearly 1/3 of those remained on home supervision for over a year before it was decided that they should be looked after away from home. And over 1/3 went to live with friends or relatives, and 42% were placed with foster carers. They were exploring options for research with SCRA to look at the content of care plans and reasons behind panel decision making, with a view of information practice guidance. In addition, the Looked After Children's Strategic Implementation Group, Care Planning Hub, have been asked to consider how they can use the evidence available to develop and or improve practice tools and develop guidance contributions specifically for home supervision to be within the bill. The fourth theme was about engaging with the child and the wider family. Now, for home supervision to be effective, the child, parents and the wider family, they need to be engaged in processes from the very start. They need to be supported and have a clear understanding of what home supervision is intended to achieve. And crucially, they need to understand what is expected of them and the consequences of not delivering on their agreed actions. Now, we heard at the December event about the importance of stable and lasting relationships in improving outcomes for vulnerable children and young people to enable them to remain at home with their families. And this is confirmed with what we know about the importance of attachment and resilience, with recent research backing up that what we know that children who are looked after at home can be at particular risk of developing poorer resilience and attachment as a result of neglect. Now, Susan Elsley is here today to talk about the work that she's doing in conjunction with LACSIG to develop programmes for proposals for a national mentoring scheme to support children looked after at home. And I think that's going to be an exciting scheme that aims to provide a stable relationship for those young people to support and improve their well-being. We also know that parents of children on home supervision have often been part of the care system themselves, and the National Parenting Strategy and the Family Nurse Partnership Scheme both aim to provide additional support for parents and to develop parenting skills to support positive relationships and attachment. And also the bill introduces a duty on local authorities to ensure that families in the very earliest stage of distress can gain access to the most appropriate interventions such as family mediation or family group counselling, because we know that if those things are used early, collaborative services such as family group conferencing, which capitalise on the strengths and the assets of that family, can help address problems before they begin to escalate into a crisis. The fifth theme was about barriers to providing effective support, and the issues that were raised were when home supervision is the right intervention, professionals need to have the right tools and access to evidence-based practice to address the child's needs and risk effectively. Now, we do know that resources are tight in the current economic climate, and that's why evidence-based practice is so important. It's also in line with the government's public service reform priorities about early intervention and preventative spending. So today we're going to hear from Nicola Hornsby about the multi-systemic therapy, an evidence-based intervention that's used in Fife to support young people in need and prevent them from entering care. Our key aim of today's event is to support you by providing this as a forum to share examples of good practice. Now, we know that there are many examples out there of children and young people who are subject to home supervision are getting the right support from a range of different sources to improve their well-being whilst remaining with their families. So beyond today, there will of course be a number of ways to help you develop those networks and to support each other to make improvements to the outcomes of children looked after at home, not least through the Early Years Collaborative. And in addition, we'll also be developing an online forum where you can continue to support one another to organise follow-up events where you'll be able to share your experiences of making changes in your own local areas. And finally, the last issue that was raised was about evidence suggesting that not all corporate parents recognise their responsibilities in relation to children who are looked after at home in the same way as they recognise the responsibilities for children who are looked after away from home. So again, the bill will define what is meant by corporate parenting and identifies those public bodies for whom those responsibilities apply. We'll use the corporate parenting duties outlined in the bill to address the home supervision corporate parenting issues identified during the December event in order to ensure that all looked after children and young people receive high quality corporate parenting and access to the same level of services and opportunities as a child would have if they weren't looked after. So for over the last 6 months, we've really tried to digest what you told us back in December, and I'm pleased to have had this opportunity to share with you some of our plans about what we want to do now, what we have been doing, and what we aim to do in the future. But that's only part of the story, and of course success will depend upon us all working together collaboratively across organisations to improve outcomes for this vulnerable group of children and young people. So I do hope that you get a lot out of today's event. We've got a lot of good speakers and a lot of good thoughts-provoking addresses to come through the course of the day. And I hope you do genuinely find it a good, useful forum to share your own experiences about what you've been doing to help improve the outcomes for looked after children at home. A group of children, I think, undoubtedly, given the turnout today, that we all care so much about. So thank you for coming today. I look forward to hearing the outcomes of today's event and look forward to working with you now and in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think what the Minister's done is set out very clearly all of the connections between past, some of the experiences that all of us have in supporting looked after children at home, sometimes better than others, the connection with the summit, with the bill, and the challenge to us all here this morning in planning further and planning collaboratively. That is now the way that things must and need to be done to impact in the most maximum way for children and young people.